I'd like to take a few minutes today to talk about an issue which has, more than any other, caused a lot of questions and confusions for members of the American Blackshirt Party and people who support us or just take a general interest in who we are and what we do. And this topic is religion. Since our inception, we have been adamant that the separation of church and state was and is a huge mistake, and that we support the establishment of Christianity as an official religion, as the official religion of the United States. When people hear this, it produces different reactions. One of them, people will say, you're unpatriotic, you're anti-American, you're a traitor to your country. And this is derived because this separation doctrine has been a core tenet of American history and American politics for quite some time. That's not to say that this is a correct policy, but it is what it is. And then you have another type of person which will, as soon as this comes up, they'll think that, well, you're trying to establish a theocratic Christian nation here in the United States along the model of a Saudi Arabia or an Iran. And this again is based upon a misperception, and it's not true. What's important to us is that our Christianity is connected to is connected to our fascism. Anytime you try to instill a doctrine or a religion on anybody through fear, violence, or force, it's not going to last, because when that fear, when that violence, that force disappears, so does whatever adherence you have to a doctrine disappear with it. That's why we want to encourage people to come not only to Christianity but to fascism through free will. We want them to embrace it on their own. Now, this is difficult in the society that we live in today. We like to think that we have as much choice as any other person when it comes to deciding what religion to adopt, what politics we want to believe in, because the law says that you can believe and obey in anything you want. And this ignores the fundamental reality of freedom. Freedom is not something negative. Freedom is something that needs to be won. It needs to be earned. It's based upon education, interaction, environment, dedication, and will. It's a very positive concept, not the negative one that we view in our laws today. Because the fundamental point I'm trying to get at is that the way society is structured in America today, to become a person of faith, to become a dedicated Christian, is becoming more and more difficult, and that's being reflected in decrease of church attendance, a reduction in the influence of religious bodies on how society operates and how politics is run, and most of all, in the election of Donald Trump, an overwhelming majority of people who consider themselves religious and evangelical voted for a man who is the negation of everything the church has worked for for the last 2,000 years. And this is derived not through some conspiracy, not through some evil doings of leftists or communists to get rid of religion in this country, but it comes from our very political history and our political foundations. Now, there's no doubt that going back to the 17th century, the American people have always been very religious and observant of their religion. But that doesn't mean that correlates into the political realm. Politically speaking, most of our founders were not Christian. Officially, they did belong to churches, but they were Christian to the extent that Barack Obama and Bill Clinton were Christian. They had to do it to appease their constituents and to gain elected office. Now, the main exponent of the separation of church and state was Thomas Jefferson. There's a movement today among people who are religious and conservative to try and counteract the left and state that the separation of church and state is a fiction. It was not something that was a core tenet of American history, and that's simply not true. Part of their justification for this is that the separation clause, which is in the Constitution, was an interpretation by Thomas Jefferson, who was not a signer of the Constitution. But as I'm going to show you, that's not really relevant to what we're talking about. I'm going to read to you a quote from Jefferson, which it's from a letter he wrote to the Danbury Baptists, where he advocated the separation of church and state. I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Now, there are some historians and people involved in politics who take different points of view with Jefferson. Some say he was really a Christian, others not. But what's apparent from this quote is that he was a supporter of the separation of church and state. He was adamant about it. He thought our freedom and liberty was tied to the separation clause. And for those who think that this is irrelevant because he was not a signer of a signer of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, which he did write, was the philosophical and political foundation of this country, and even more so than the Constitution, it's adhered to today as almost a semi-divine work. And even during this time, before the Constitution was signed, all 13 colonies had an established church that was taxpayer funded and recognized. And as soon as that Constitution was signed, one by one, these established churches were disestablished, along with any kind of religious observance by the individual states and any kind of mixture between state and religion. So obviously, this separation clause is not a fiction. It was recognized by the people back then and the people now as something that really exists, as something that was fundamental. There were groups going all the way back to the 19th century who attempted to put into the Constitution something called the Christian Amendment, which would not have established a church, but what it would have done is put language into the Constitution which recognized that our nation and our laws have God as their foundation. That's all it would have done. It would have recognized Christianity as a source of who we are. And that too was rejected because it was felt that it would have broached that separation between church and state. You know, to top this off too, we have the Southern Baptist Convention, probably the most conservative evangelical group in the country, who in the 1970s supported the legalization of abortion. And they did this because they felt laws prohibiting abortion would have violated the separation of church and state, the Constitution, and what our founding fathers wanted. So this idea of there being separate spheres between church and state goes back a long time, and it's led to a lot of the problems that we have today with abortions, gay marriage, the issues of transgenderism with men using female bathrooms, and a lot of the cultural and moral decay that we see today in our country. And this is derived to a large extent to a mistaken view of religion. Now, what I want to do is present to you an alternative, because fascism is not what you see or what you read about in the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages as far as combining church and state. I'm going to present you a couple of quotes, one from Giovanni Gentili, probably the premier fascist philosopher during the interwar era, And Friedrich Hegel, who was somebody who established the foundations before fascism was established, but created the intellectual rationale and the beginnings of it. First, from Gentili: no state can ignore the religion of its people any more than it can be indifferent about their customs or their moral attitudes or anything else so closely connected with their political life. Now, from Hegel: in a general sense, religion and the foundation of the state are one and the same. They are in their real essence identical. There is but one conception of freedom in religion and the state. This one conception is man's highest possession, and it is realized by man. A nation which has a false or bad conception of God has also a bad state, bad government, and bad laws. So to put it in a nutshell, fascism and our view of religion is that there is no public, there is no private. You have the state and the nation, and every act, every part of the social structure affects either one. And there's no pure act which does not affect everybody else. Religion is imperative to who we are as people. It cannot be ignored by the state. The state has an essential role to play. Now, I have a question for those of you who are listening to this and you still really don't want anything to do with fascism, but you're an evangelical, you're a traditionalist Catholic, and you're worried about the future for your children, your grandchildren, and the direction your country is going morally and ethically. How does a state which is a government which is small, which has delineated powers, which and is here only to protect property and enforce contract, how does that government have the moral rationale, the moral legitimacy to tackle an issue like abortion, gay rights, transgenderism, and any other kind of moral issue? If government is a neutral umpire, which is basically here to protect property, how does it have the authority to engage in laws restricting any of those activities? I mean, if you have an answer to that, leave a comment, please, in under the video, because I want to know. And here's the problem with this country's politics since 1776. You basically have a good, faithful, religious people who have tried to make it work with a political ideology derived from Enlightenment thought, which rejected Christianity in place of a secular kind of scientific view, and it's not working. Our problems today, speaking morally, most people don't look too far into this, and they attribute it to communist conspiracies, conspiracy of Jewish oligarchs, anything along those lines, and it's bunk. As we were talking about earlier with the Southern Baptist Convention, the problem is that we're trying to make it work with an ideology that can't. If you're concerned about the immorality and the decaying social structure in this country, you need to adopt a new political orientation, a new view of the state, and fascism provides that. Fascism doesn't believe in the neutral umpire state. It believes in a state which is moral and ethical. And if you're concerned with a lot of these issues, we provide the solution. Now, on our Facebook page, I brought up this topic the other day, and ask for some questions in regards to religion that people might have. And probably the most popular one would be how we feel about other religions than Christianity. And while we support the establishment of Christianity as the official religion in this country, we realize that you're not going to get 100% of the people on board with that. If you did, then we're going back to what I spoke of earlier about a religion being established by force and fear, something that cannot last. So you're always going to have a certain amount of people who want to not conform and do their own thing, which is fine. And our position in regards to Muslims, Jews, pagans, if you want to join with us, great, because if you want to join an organization which supports establishing Christianity as the official religion, then that's excellent. I mean, that is an endorsement of who we are and what we do. And for those who are opposed to this, who don't want Muslims or Jews to be a part of our organization, I have to ask you, what do you want them to do? I mean, part of this fallacious argument against them is that they're ruining the culture, the social structure of the countries they go to. Well, if they want to join the American Blackshirt Party, then there is no issue with that. So we are open to membership for anybody else who wants to join, whether you're Muslim, Jewish, pagan. You're welcome. There's no issue with that. And the other big thing that comes up with is that there's some confusion on the establishment of a church. Most countries that recognize a certain church as the established church will recognize, let's say, the Catholic Church or Presbyterian, Lutheran, a particular branch of the faith like that. And that's not what we're trying to get to. And I want to draw an analogy to the American Blackshirt Party in our name. A lot of people think that because we have black shirts in the name, that our members should be actually wearing a black shirt. And the confusion that's derived from this is that the name black shirt signifies the values, signifies the ideals of those people who had that name in the 1920s. And that's what we're trying to get across here. I mean, I could wear a blue shirt or a gray shirt, and as the point is that it's imperative to stand up for those values. It's not about clothing or about a certain kind of uniform. It's about how you present yourself and how you present the party. And it's the same thing for religion. This country is kind of a hodgepodge of Christian religions. You have the various Protestant faiths. You have a lot of Catholics. You've had a lot of Eastern Orthodox in this century and the last century come over. And to pick out one of those sects to be the official church, wouldn't make any sense. It would be extremely counterproductive. So what we want to do is we believe that Christians as Christians have more in common than disagreements. So what we want to do is take those values, take those things we believe in that we have in common, and base our government, base our laws, and base our society on those values. What it is a recognition of our history, our traditions, and our beliefs that we share in common, and interject those into the public sphere. We no longer hold public and private differences And there's nothing more imperative, nothing more public than the religion of a country and its people. So that's basically what we want to do. When we talk about breaking down that wall, we want to take those values and put them into the public sphere. Because it makes absolutely no sense. And one thing that's always amazed me is that with this country going down the toilet morally and ethically, how Christians, Protestants, Catholics cannot work together to overcome a lot of these issues. They're more concerned about their trivial little disagreements than working together, creating a better country for their children and their nation. So until next time, thank you for listening. I will speak to you again soon.